If money disappeared tomorrow, it wouldn't vanish with a bang, but with a slow, grinding unraveling that most people wouldn't recognize until it was too late. The first signs would feel like inconvenience, not catastrophe. ATMs limiting withdrawals, bank transfers delayed for security reasons, the sudden announcement that certain bills are being replaced or phased out. History shows us that financial collapse rarely arrives as a single dramatic event. It's a process, a chain reaction where trust evaporates before the currency itself does. And once trust is gone, money is nothing but paper and pixels. We've seen this story before in ancient empires and modern nations, in both developed and developing economies. The question isn't if it can happen again, but whether we will even recognize it in time to protect ourselves. To understand what happens when money disappears, you first have to understand what money actually is. It's not the coins in your pocket or the numbers in your bank account. At its core, money is a shared belief, a collective agreement that this token, whether metal, paper, or digital, can be exchanged for goods and services. When that belief is strong, the single slip of paper can move armies, feed cities, and build skyscrapers. When it breaks, no law, no government decree, no central bank policy can restore it overnight. This was as true in the Roman Empire as it was in Zimbabwe in the early 21st century. The fall of Rome didn't just happen on the battlefield. It happened in the mix. When silver coins were debased so heavily with base metals that they became little more than worthless discs. Bread sellers started demanding payment in kind, meat, oil, even chickens because they no longer trusted the coins. Once the currency stopped functioning as a store of value, the empire's economy fractured. Fast forward to Weimar Germany after the First World War, where inflation spiraled into absurdity. In 1923, prices doubled every few days. People were paid twice a day so they could rush to spend their wages before they lost value. Bank notes in the millions became worthless before they could be spent. Entire wheelbarrows of cash were traded for a loaf of bread. Money didn't just disappear physically, it disappeared in the one place that matters, the mind. The financial system had collapsed because the belief in its currency had dissolved. And without that belief, all the wealth people thought they had saved was gone in an instant. In Zimbabwe's hyperinflation of the 2000s, the government printed $100 trillion bills. Think about that. A number so large it sounds like satire, yet it bought barely enough groceries for a few days. The notes themselves became curiosities for foreign collectors, worth more as souvenirs than as currency. In Venezuela, the collapse was so severe that people turned to bartering haircuts for food or smuggling goods across borders. The common thread in all these cases was the same. Once the financial system broke down, people reverted to whatever form of exchange still held trust: gold, goods, foreign currency, anything but the national money. If this happened tomorrow in a major economy, say the United States or the European Union, the ripple effects would be global and immediate. Supply chains depend on instant, trust-based transactions across thousands of miles. Without a functioning currency, imports would freeze, shipping would stop, and shelves would empty in days. International contracts written in that currency would become meaningless overnight. Even digital transactions, the lifeblood of the modern financial system, would grind to a halt if banks froze accounts to prevent a run on deposits. The shock to the system wouldn't just be economic, it would be deeply psychological. For generations, people have assumed their bank accounts were safe, their paychecks will clear, their pensions will be there when they retire. If that illusion breaks, panic takes over. Historically, when money collapses, people don't just lose wealth, they lose the framework of their daily lives. Trade slows, trust evaporates, and the gap between those who prepared and those who didn't becomes brutally visible. In ancient times, this meant the rise of barter systems and localized economies. In modern times, it often means a rush to alternative stores of value. If Argentina's repeated currency crises, the US dollar being the unofficial lifeline. In Russia, during the ruble crisis of the 1990s, foreign currency and hard goods became a second economy. Today, in the shadow of recent banking instability, many see crypto as the escape hatch, a decentralized, borderless way to hold value when the traditional system looks shaky. But let's not romanticize crypto as the silver bullet. If money vanished tomorrow, cryptocurrencies would face their own challenges. They depend on electricity, internet access, and functioning exchanges, all of which can be disrupted in a true systemic collapse. That doesn't mean they wouldn't play a role. In fact, during moments of localized collapse, we've already seen Bitcoin and other digital assets act as an emergency store of value. In countries with capital controls, crypto has been a lifeline for moving money across borders. But in a full-scale breakdown of the global currency, they would be just one piece of a very messy survival puzzle. Gold, on the other hand, has a long history of surviving currency death. From ancient Egypt's pharaohs to modern central banks, gold has been the ultimate fallback asset, universally recognized and impossible to print into oblivion. During the collapse of the Soviet Union, gold jewelry and coins were traded for food and favors. In the Great Depression, when banks failed and people's savings vanished, those with gold had bargaining power when cash became scarce. But gold is also heavy, hard to transport in quantity, and easily confiscated by desperate governments. It's no coincidence that, in the United States, during the 1930s, the government literally banned private ownership of gold and forced citizens to turn it in. In a crisis, the rules change quickly. So what would life look like in the days and weeks after money disappeared tomorrow? The first, chaos. Supermarkets would see runs on essentials. Gas stations would limit purchases or refuse the old currency entirely. Small-scale barter networks would spring up. A mechanic trading repairs for food, a farmer swapping vegetables for medicine. Communities would start to form microeconomies based on trust and tangible goods. The black market would explode, not just for contraband, but for basics like baby formula or batteries. Those with real wealth, not just digits in a bank, but assets with intrinsic or widely accepted value, would adapt fastest. Over time, a replacement currency would emerge, but it wouldn't necessarily be issued by the state. In some historical collapses, private banks or even large corporations have issued their own scrip, trusted within certain regions or industries. In other cases, foreign currencies take over entirely. After Yugoslavia's collapse in the 1990s, the German mark became the de facto currency in many regions. In a modern collapse, it is entirely possible that a global tech company could create a stable digital currency backed by tangible assets, leapfrogging governments in the process. That possibility is exactly why central banks around the world are racing to develop their own digital currencies. They know that if they lose the ability to control the medium of exchange, they lose power itself. And that's the heart of this discussion. Money and power are inseparable. Whoever controls the currency controls the economy and, by extension, the society. When money disappears, that power shatters, and the scramble to replace it determines the next order. In Rome, it was the military and local strongmen who stepped in. In modern times, it's often international lenders like the IMF dictating terms in exchange for emergency funds. In the future, it could be a mix of states, corporations, and decentralized networks all vying for dominance. For the individual, the lesson from economic history is brutally simple. If your wealth exists only inside the financial system, it's not truly yours. Bank deposits, stocks, bonds, all of them are claims on a system that can be frozen, revalued, or erased. Real wealth is diversified, tangible, and, above all, resilient. It might be physical assets, it might be skills that others need, it might be networks of trust that function outside the official economy. The people who survive currency collapse with their financial freedom intact are never the ones who trusted the system blindly. They are the ones who understood that the system is only as strong as public belief, and that belief can vanish overnight. If money disappeared tomorrow, those people would still wake up thinking the world was normal until they tried to buy bread, fill their car, or pay rent. The smart ones would already have seen the signs: mounting debt levels, inflation outpacing wages, central bank policy control, political instability, eroding trust. Financial historians. My job is to make sure you see those signs before it's too late. Because history doesn't just tell us that money can vanish. It tells us exactly how it happens and what survives when it does. And the ultimate irony? When the dust settles, when a new system rises from the ruins, those who kept their real wealth will find that the world has been reset, and the game has started again with new rules, new winners, and the same old human nature driving it all. If this gave you any perspective on how fragile the financial system really is, don't just nod and move on. Think about what wealth means in your life. Think about what you could trade, build, or hold that would still have value if the numbers in your account vanish tomorrow. Because money is only an idea, and when the idea dies, you'll want something real in your hands. Hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.